I was clinically dead for 5 minutes, and Jesus showed me America's economic future. What I experienced during those moments will leave you speechless. My name is Michael, and I'm a 47-year-old emergency room physician from Denver. I've always been a man of science, someone who believed only in what I could see, touch, and measure. For 20 years, I've saved lives, dealt with death daily, and thought I understood everything about the boundaries between life and death. I never believed in those near-death experience stories, but what happened to me changed everything I thought I knew about reality. Just 2 months ago, I was living what many would consider a successful life, until everything began crashing down. My medical practice was drowning in debt from the pandemic. I was working 18-hour days just to survive, and my marriage was falling apart under the crushing weight of financial stress. Sarah and I barely spoke anymore, and my own children felt like strangers. Here I was, a doctor who spent every day saving lives, yet I felt completely powerless to save my own. The irony was devastating. I had all the medical knowledge in the world, but I couldn't diagnose what was destroying my family, my career, everything I'd worked 20 years to build. That Tuesday started like any other nightmare day. I'd been up all night with a cardiac emergency, hadn't eaten since the morning before, and was running on nothing but coffee and adrenaline. I remember looking at myself in the bathroom mirror at the hospital and thinking, this isn't living anymore, this is just surviving. I was driving home around 3 a.m., completely drained, when exhaustion finally caught up with me. One moment, I was gripping the steering wheel, fighting to keep my eyes open, and the next moment, I was waking up to the sound of sirens and the smell of gasoline. My car had veered off the highway and slammed into a concrete barrier at 60 miles per hour. The impact was devastating. The paramedics later told me that my heart had stopped beating at the scene. For 5 minutes and 23 seconds, I was clinically dead. No pulse, no brain activity, nothing. But during those 5 minutes, I experienced something that completely shattered my understanding of reality. Then it happened. One moment, I was trapped in that mangled car, feeling the life drain out of me, and the next moment I was floating above it all, watching the paramedics work frantically on my body. It was the strangest sensation, like being completely weightless and incredibly peaceful at the same time. I could see everything with perfect clarity, the flashing lights, the concerned faces of the emergency crew. But I felt completely detached from it all. I wasn't afraid. That surprised me more than anything. Here I was, watching my own death unfold, and all I felt was this incredible sense of calm. I tried to call out to the paramedics, to tell them I was okay, but they couldn't. Hear me, I was there, but I wasn't there. As I looked around, trying to make sense of what was happening, I noticed a brilliant light in the distance. Not like a flashlight or headlights, but something warm and inviting that seemed to pulse with its own living energy. The light was calling to me, and without even thinking about it, I started moving toward it. The journey felt both instantaneous and eternal. I was gliding through what seemed like a tunnel, but not a dark, scary tunnel like you see in movies. This was filled with the most beautiful, pure light I'd ever seen. Colors that don't exist on Earth swirled around me, and I could hear what sounded like music, but not music made by any instrument I knew. It was like the universe itself was singing. As I continued deeper through this tunnel of light, something extraordinary began happening. I started seeing images flashing around me, scenes from my life, but not just the big moments. I saw myself as a 5-year-old helping my grandmother tend her garden, as a teenager studying late into the night to get into medical school, the day I graduated, my wedding day, the birth of my children. But I also saw the moments I'd forgotten or tried to ignore, times when I'd been selfish, impatient, when I'd put work before family, when fear had made me choose safety over compassion. These weren't judgmental visions. I wasn't being condemned or criticized. Instead, I felt overwhelming love and understanding washing over me with each memory. It was like seeing my life through the eyes of perfect love, where every mistake was forgiven, every struggle was understood, and every small act of kindness mattered more than I'd ever realized. When the life review ended, and I finally emerged from the tunnel, I found myself in a place that defied description. It was like standing in the most beautiful meadow you could imagine, but the grass beneath my feet felt like pure energy. The sky above wasn't just blue. It was every shade of blue that ever existed, shifting and dancing with ribbons of gold and silver light. Flowers bloomed around me that seemed to glow from within, and the air itself felt alive with love and peace. But what took my breath away was the figure walking toward me through this paradise. I knew immediately who it was, even though I'd never seen him before. Jesus was approaching me with a smile that radiated pure love and understanding. He wasn't the pale, weak figure from church paintings. He was strong, radiant, filled with an energy that made the sun look dim by comparison. His eyes held all the wisdom of eternity, but when he looked at me, I felt like I was the only person in existence. The love I felt from him was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't conditional or earned. It was just there, perfect and complete, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. "Michael," he said, and his voice was like hearing every beautiful sound that ever existed harmonized together. "You've been carrying so much weight on your shoulders." As he reached out his hand to me, I felt a shift in the very fabric of reality around us. Everything changed in an instant. We were no longer in that heavenly meadow, but standing in what looked like a vast library or observatory, with windows that showed scenes playing out like movies. The scenes were of America, but not the America I knew. This was America in the near future, and what I was seeing terrified me. "I need to show you something, Michael," Jesus said gently. "Something that's coming to your country, to the world. You need to understand what's ahead so you can help prepare people's hearts for what's to come." The first window showed massive economic collapse. I saw banks closing, ATMs going dark, people standing in long lines outside grocery stores that had empty shelves. The dollar had become worthless, and I watched families who had been comfortable middle-class Americans suddenly finding themselves unable to afford basic necessities. The scene was chaos, but underneath it all, I sensed something deeper happening. "This isn't punishment, Michael," Jesus explained, his voice filled with compassion. "This is a great awakening. Sometimes people only turn to the light when everything they've built in darkness falls away. The economic system you've trusted in is built on greed and fear. When it collapses, people will finally be free to build something based on love and community." The second window showed natural disasters, but not random destruction. I saw massive storms, earthquakes, and floods, but in every scene, I also saw people helping each other, communities coming together, strangers becoming family. Where the old systems had failed, new networks of support were emerging. "The earth herself is shifting, preparing for a new age," Jesus continued. "What looks like destruction is actually purification. Those who learn to love unconditionally, who choose service over selfishness, they will not only survive what's coming, they will thrive in the new world that emerges." But the final window, this one shook me to my core. It showed America divided, not by politics or race, but by something far more fundamental. Those who chose love and those who chose fear. I saw people who had embraced the spiritual awakening, living in communities of incredible abundance and peace, while others, who clung to the old ways of competition and greed, found themselves in increasing chaos and isolation. And that's when Jesus spoke to me directly about what's coming to America. As I stood in that presence, overwhelmed by the divine light that seemed to penetrate every fiber of my being, the voice that had called me by name began to speak with an authority that made my very soul tremble. This wasn't just a spiritual encounter. This was a revelation about what's coming for humanity and why so many are already feeling the tremors of change. "My child," the voice continued, and I felt waves of both love and urgent concern washing over me. "What you are about to see is not distant future. It is already beginning. Look around you in your world. Do you not see the signs?" Then everything shifted around me, like reality itself was reshaping. Suddenly I found myself standing in living rooms across America, not as an observer, but feeling every emotion as if it were my own. I watched a father at a kitchen table, calculator in hand, his shoulders sagging as he realized his paycheck wouldn't cover the mortgage this month. I felt his wife's silent tears as she quietly canceled their daughter's piano lessons. The weight of their unspoken fears pressed against my chest like a physical force. This wasn't just witnessing. I was experiencing the anxiety of 55% of Americans struggling financially right now. But here's what shook me. This wasn't random economic hardship. Each family's pain was connected to something much larger unfolding. This economic transformation you're witnessing, the divine voice resonated through my entire being, is not random. It is not the failure of human systems alone. This is a spiritual reset, a necessary purification that will separate those who have built their lives on material foundations from those who understand eternal truth. As those words settled into my soul, the vision intensified with terrifying clarity. I watched currencies collapse like dominoes, not the gradual inflation we see today, but sudden, devastating crashes that turned lifelong savings into worthless paper overnight. I saw lines of desperate people outside banks, their life savings, trapped behind locked doors. But here's what pierced my heart. In every scene of economic chaos, I also saw the spiritual opportunity hidden within the crisis. Can you imagine losing everything you've worked for, only to discover that your true security was never in your bank account? This wasn't just economic collapse. This was divine intervention, carefully orchestrated to redirect humanity's focus from temporal wealth to eternal truth. The nuclear tensions you see rising in your world, the divine voice continued with urgent compassion. And suddenly I was thrust into scenes that made my heart race with recognition. I saw the very headlines I'd been reading: escalating conflicts, threats of nuclear warfare, world leaders positioning their weapons like chess pieces on a board of destruction. But now I understood the deeper truth. These are not separate from the economic reset. They are interconnected signs of the end times approaching. The vision showed me something that changed everything. When human systems fail, when money loses its power to provide security, when fear grips the hearts of world leaders, that is precisely when divine intervention becomes undeniable. Think about it. What happens when the most powerful people on earth realize their weapons can't protect them from what's coming? In that moment, tears streamed down my face, not from sadness, but from overwhelming revelation. What millions perceive as random global chaos is actually orchestrated divine intervention. Every economic struggle, every political crisis, every headline that fills us with dread, it's all preparation for the greatest spiritual awakening in human history. The divine love I felt was so intense, it was almost unbearable. This crisis isn't happening to destroy us. It's happening to save us from our own spiritual blindness. "Tell me," the voice asked with such gentle authority that my soul trembled, "what does your heart tell you about those who are suffering financially in your world? Do you see only economic hardship, or do you recognize the spiritual opportunity?" In that moment, Understanding flooded through me like liquid light. The 55% of Americans struggling financially right now aren't victims of random economic forces. They're being prepared for something infinitely greater. Picture this: their material security is being carefully stripped away so they can discover the unshakable security that comes only from divine connection. Their comfortable illusions about earthly prosperity are being lovingly shattered so they can build their lives on foundations that cannot be moved by any earthly crisis. Every financial struggle you're experiencing right now, could this be preparation for the most important spiritual breakthrough of your life? This experience taught me, I realized even as I was still in the vision, that what we call economic crisis is actually spiritual preparation. Every family worried about their finances, every person anxious about their future, they're being prepared to receive truth they couldn't accept while they felt materially secure. The divine presence emanated approval. Now you begin to understand. The coming economic transformation will be unlike anything your generation has experienced. It will make the struggles you see today seem like gentle preparation. But for those who recognize my hand in these events, for those who turn to me instead of to failing human systems, this crisis will become their greatest spiritual breakthrough. The truth hit me with stunning clarity. The nuclear threats, the economic instability, the overwhelming sense that our world is spinning out of control. Every single crisis is designed to drive humanity to the ultimate choice point. Will we continue desperately clinging to human systems that are clearly crumbling? Or will we finally recognize that true security comes only from divine connection? This is the question every soul on earth will soon face. Jesus seemed to sense my overwhelming questions about this choice, because the vision immediately shifted to show me something that filled me with hope. The miraculous response emerging from the chaos. I saw families who had lost their homes but found unbreakable spiritual community. I watched former millionaires stripped of their wealth, discovering joy they'd never known as they served struggling neighbors. Communities were forming around, shared faith rather than shared bank accounts, and the love flowing between them was more precious than any currency. One scene that will forever be etched in my heart. A businessman who had lost his fortune was teaching children to read in a community garden, and his face radiated more peace than I'd ever seen when he was wealthy. What if losing everything you think you need is actually the doorway to gaining everything your soul truly craves? Remember, the divine voice impressed upon my consciousness with such clarity it became part of my very DNA. Those who appear to be losing everything in this economic reset are actually being given the opportunity to gain everything that truly matters. The love in that voice was overwhelming as the truth continued. The nuclear tensions that terrify world leaders are simply my way of demonstrating that human power is an illusion. And when their weapons cannot provide security, when their money cannot buy peace, when their governments cannot protect them from the consequences of their spiritual rebellion, that is when they will finally seek the security that only I can provide. Let me ask you something that might change how you see your current struggles. What if every financial worry you have right now is actually an invitation to discover unshakable divine security? In that moment, the purpose of my entire experience crystallized with perfect clarity. I wasn't just witnessing what's coming. I was being prepared to help others recognize the choice they'll soon face. The economic transformation isn't something to fear. It's divine intervention designed to save humanity from its own spiritual blindness. Every headline about financial crisis, every personal money worry, every economic indicator that fills you with dread, these aren't signs of the end. They're signs of the most magnificent spiritual beginning in human history. As the vision began to fade, I felt myself being drawn back toward my physical body, but the final message resonated through every part of my being. Share what you have seen. Tell them that the economic struggles they're experiencing now are preparation for the spiritual breakthrough that awaits those who choose correctly. The crisis is not the end. It's the beginning of the greatest spiritual awakening in human history. When I returned to consciousness in that hospital room, it was like awakening into a completely different reality. The same world, but seen through eternal eyes. I no longer saw economic headlines as sources of anxiety. They became confirmations of perfect divine timing. I no longer viewed the 55% of Americans struggling financially as victims. They became souls being lovingly prepared for the greatest spiritual transformation in history, the nuclear threats dominating every news cycle. They weren't harbingers of human destruction, but evidence that human systems are finally giving way to divine intervention. Have you noticed how everything that once felt secure now feels uncertain? That's not coincidence, that's preparation. This experience didn't just change my perspective, it gave me spiritual X-ray vision to see what's really happening in our world. Every economic indicator, every geopolitical tension, every news story that makes your heart race with fear. I now recognize these as perfectly orchestrated pieces of a divine plan unfolding exactly as it should. Here's the real question that will determine your future. Will you recognize these events as opportunities for the spiritual awakening your soul has been longing for? Or will you keep trying to find security in systems that are being lovingly dismantled for your own spiritual liberation? The choice is yours, and it's the most important decision you'll ever make. What I experienced in those 5 minutes has given me a completely different lens through which to view our current world. Every headline about economic struggle, every report about families unable to pay their bills, every warning about nuclear tensions, I now see these not as random crises, but as carefully orchestrated invitations for spiritual awakening. The divine presence that spoke to me made it clear what appears to be chaos is actually perfect preparation for the greatest spiritual transformation in human history. Remember, love is the greatest force in the universe, and that love is orchestrating everything you're seeing unfold. If you're experiencing financial anxiety right now, if you're losing sleep over bills, if the systems you once trusted feel like they're crumbling around you, I want you to know this isn't happening to you. It's happening for you. The divine love I encountered showed me that every economic struggle is actually an invitation to discover security that no earthly system can provide or take away. This preparation isn't punishment. It's the most loving gift you could receive. Your soul is being prepared for something infinitely greater than any material security you've ever known. As I recovered in that hospital room, one truth became crystal clear. The most important choice you'll ever make is happening right now. Will you continue desperately clinging to systems that are clearly failing, or will you recognize this moment as your invitation to discover unshakable divine security? This is love in action, preparing humanity for the greatest spiritual breakthrough in history. Every day you delay this recognition, every moment you spend in fear instead of faith, is a missed opportunity to align with the divine plan that's already unfolding around you. Remember, love is the greatest force in the universe, and that love is offering you security no earthly system could ever provide. What happens when you finally stop fighting the transformation and start embracing the spiritual awakening your soul has been longing for? Share your thoughts below, because recognizing this divine preparation in our current crisis isn't just a conversation, it's the most important decision you'll make in your lifetime.